The whiskey glass felt cold against my palm as I sat in my leather chair, watching the driveway through our front window. 11:47 p.m. Heather's third late meeting this week, and it was only Wednesday. My name is Evan Garrison, and I've been building houses in this coastal Maine town for 15 years. I know how to read blueprints, spot structural weaknesses, and recognize when something doesn't add up. Tonight, my wife was about to give me all the evidence I needed. The headlights swept across our Victorian's weathered shingles as her sedan pulled into the driveway. I took another sip of whiskey and waited. The front door opened with its familiar creak. I'd been meaning to oil those hinges for months, but now I was grateful for the warning system. "Evan, you still awake?" Heather's voice carried that artificial brightness she used when she was nervous. "In here," I called back, not moving from my chair. She appeared in the doorway, and I had to admire her audacity. Her navy blouse was inside out, the tag clearly visible at her throat. Just below it, a purple mark the size of a quarter decorated her neck like some twisted jewelry. "How was the meeting?" I asked, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "Oh, you know how it is. Clayton had some last-minute revisions for the Morrison account." She touched her neck absently, then caught herself. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" "Just thinking." I reached over and clicked on the table lamp. The warm light illuminated her disheveled appearance. Wrinkled skirt, smudged lipstick, hair that looked like she'd been running her fingers through it. "You look tired." "It was a long day." She started toward the stairs. "I'm going to shower and get to bed." "Heather." She stopped, one foot on the bottom step. "Yeah?" I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. The screen glowed with a timestamp from 30 minutes ago. Her home office came into view. The desk she'd inherited from her grandmother, the motivational posters on the wall, the leather chair where she conducted her important calls. And there she was, blouse already inside out, entertaining her boss Clayton Mercer in ways that definitely weren't covered in the employee handbook. The color drained from her face as she watched herself on screen. Clayton was indeed photogenic, silver-haired, distinguished, the kind of man who wore expensive cologne and thought rules didn't apply to him. "Evan, I can explain." "Can you?" I closed the laptop with a soft click. "Because I've got 11 other videos just like this one. Different days, same performance." She sank onto the bottom step like her legs had given out. "How long have you known?" "I installed the camera last week, but I've suspected for months." I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at Mrs. Winslow's house next door. Her bedroom light was still on. That woman never missed anything. The late meetings, the new clothes, the way you started doing your hair differently, you weren't very subtle. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." I turned back to her. "Clayton's married too, isn't he? 3 kids, house on Elm Street, drives that ridiculous BMW he parks at the marina when you two have your little rendezvous." Heather's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "You followed us?" "Didn't have to. This town's smaller than you think, and people talk. Sam at Murphy's pub mentioned seeing Clayton's car there every Tuesday and Thursday night, same nights as your meetings." I picked up my whiskey glass and drained it. "Funny coincidence." She stood up, trying to regain her composure. "Okay, fine. Yes, Clayton and I have been seeing each other. But our marriage has been over for months, Evan. You know that. Our marriage was fine until you decided to audition for a promotion on your back. Don't be crude." "Crude?" I laughed, and it came out harsher than I intended. "You want to talk about crude? I can show you crude. It's all right here on my laptop, time-stamped and cataloged." She took a step toward me, her expression shifting from shame to something more calculating. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" I repeated the question slowly, savoring it. "I want you to understand that your little affair just cost you everything. The house, the savings, the comfortable life you've been taking for granted while you played office games with your boss." "You can't prove anything." I held up a USB drive. "Already did. My lawyer has copies. So does my accountant. And tomorrow morning, Clayton's wife is going to receive a very interesting package in her mailbox." Heather's face went white. "You wouldn't." "I already have. The courier service guarantees delivery by 9 a.m. She lunged for my laptop, but I was ready for her. I caught her wrists and held her back easily. 15 years of construction work had kept me strong, while her gym membership had apparently been used for other activities. "Let go of me." "Gladly." I released her, and she stumbled backward. "But the laptop stays with me, along with the backup drives I've hidden where you'll never find them." She straightened her inside-out blouse with shaking hands. "This is insane. You're destroying both our lives over a mistake." 12 mistakes, I corrected. "And I'm not destroying anything. I'm just making sure everyone knows what kind of person they're dealing with." "Clayton will deny everything." Hard to deny video evidence, especially when his wife sees how photogenic he really is. Heather's composure finally cracked completely. You bastard. You think you're so clever, sitting here in your little house, playing with your tools, building things no one cares about. Clayton offers me a real future. Clayton offers you nothing but a good time and empty promises. You think he's going to leave his wife for you, his kids, his reputation? I shook my head. You're not that naive, Heather. Or maybe you are. She grabbed her purse from the hall table. I'm staying at Melinda's tonight. Good idea. Give you time to think about what you're going to tell your parents when they find out why their perfect daughter's marriage fell apart. She paused at the door. You'll regret this, Evan. I promise you that. The only thing I regret is not installing that camera sooner. The door slammed behind her, rattling the windows. I walked back to my chair and poured another whiskey. Outside, Mrs. Winslow's curtain twitched. I raised my glass to her window in a mock toast. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, but the message was clear. Saw the show tonight. She had it coming. More where that came from if you need it. A friend. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. But I memorized the number first. This was just the beginning. The next morning brought gray clouds and the smell of rain from the harbor. I was in my workshop behind the house, running a piece of oak through the table saw, when my sister Kara knocked on the door frame. Heard you had some excitement last night, she said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. Kara was 2 years younger than me, but twice as fierce. She ran a bookkeeping business from her apartment downtown and had never liked Heather. Said she was too polished, too fake. Turned out she was right. News travels fast, I said, switching off the saw. Mrs. Winslow called me at 7 this morning. Said she saw Heather leave with a suitcase and you sitting in the window like you were watching a movie. Kara hopped up on my workbench, scattering sawdust. Want to tell me what really happened? I told her everything. The camera, the videos, the confrontation. Kara listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. That conniving witch, she said when I finished. And Clayton Mercer? Really? That pompous idiot who thinks he owns half the town. You know him? I do his company's books. Or did, until they fired me last month for asking too many questions about their expense reports. She grinned. Turns out those business dinners Clayton was claiming weren't always business. What kind of questions? The kind that make married men nervous. Hotel charges, restaurant bills for two when he was supposedly dining alone, rental car expenses when his BMW was in the shop. She pulled out her phone. I kept copies of everything, of course. Of course you did. So what's the plan? Because I know you, Evan. You're not the type to just file for divorce and walk away. You want payback. She was right. I'd spent the night thinking about it, planning. Heather had humiliated me, betrayed our marriage, made me look like a fool in front of the whole town. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. I want them both to understand what it feels like to lose everything, I said. Their jobs, their reputations, their comfortable little lives built on lies. I'm in. Kara slid off the workbench. What do you need? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Sam Murphy, owner of Murphy's Pub and my oldest friend in town. Evan, you need to get down here. Sam's voice was tight with urgency. What's wrong? Clayton Mercer just walked in, looking like someone stole his favorite toy. He's asking questions about you, about what you might know, about who you've been talking to. Sam lowered his voice. And he's not asking nicely. I looked at Kara, who was already grabbing her jacket. We'll be right there. Murphy's Pub occupied the ground floor of a brick building that had survived 3 hurricanes and countless economic downturns. Sam had inherited it from his father and turned it into the unofficial town hall where everyone eventually showed up to share gossip, complain about the weather, or celebrate whatever needed celebrating. Clayton Mercer sat at the far end of the bar, his expensive suit looking out of place among the fishermen and construction workers who made up the usual morning crowd. He was nursing a scotch and talking to Eddie Martineau, who ran the bait shop down by the docks. Just saying, people should be careful about spreading rumors, Clayton was saying as we walked in, especially when those rumors could hurt innocent people. Morning, Clayton, I said, sliding onto the bar stool next to him. Little early for scotch, isn't it? He turned to face me, and I could see the strain around his eyes. His usually perfect hair was mussed, and his tie was crooked. Evan, I was hoping we could talk. About what? About whatever misunderstanding you might have regarding my professional relationship with your wife. I laughed. Professional relationship? Is that what we're calling it? Clayton glanced around the bar, aware that conversations had stopped and ears were tuned in our direction. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. I don't think so. See, I've found that private conversations with you tend to get complicated. Ask Heather. His jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting my wife, but that's been corrected. Sam appeared with a cup of coffee and set it in front of me. Everything okay here, boys? Just fine, I said. Clayton was just telling me about his professional relationship with Heather. Very hands-on management style, from what I understand. Clayton stood up abruptly, throwing a 20 on the bar. This conversation isn't over. Yes, it is, I said without looking at him. But don't worry. I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to think about it when you're explaining things to your wife. He left without another word, the door slamming behind him. The bar stayed quiet for a moment, then Eddie Martineau let out a low whistle. That man's got trouble written all over him, Eddie said. Trouble's got a way of finding people who go looking for it, Sam replied, refilling my coffee cup. Kara had been sitting quietly at a corner table, but now she approached the bar. How long before word gets back to Heather? About 10 minutes, Sam said. Melinda Patterson was in here earlier, asking questions about you, Evan. She's Heather's friend from the office. I know Melinda. She's the one who covers for Heather when she has her meetings. Well, she seemed mighty interested in your state of mind. Kept asking if you seemed angry or unstable. I drained my coffee cup and stood up. Let's give them something to really talk about. What did you have in mind? Kara asked. A little field trip to the marina. I want to see Clayton's BMW up close. The marina was a 15-minute drive through the winding streets of downtown. Clayton's car was exactly where Sam had said it would be, parked in the far corner of the lot, away from the main docks where casual observers might notice it. The BMW was pristine, all black paint and chrome accents. Clayton probably spent more on car washes than I made in a week. I walked around it slowly, admiring the craftsmanship. Nice car, Jonas said, appearing beside me like a ghost. Jonas worked on my construction crew, a quiet ex-Marine who'd moved to town 5 years ago and never talked much about his past. He was reliable, skilled, and had a talent for showing up exactly when you needed him. Didn't expect to see you here, I said. Heard you might need some help with a project. He nodded toward the BMW. This part of it? Might be. Jonas reached into his jacket and pulled out a small bag. Marine Corps taught me a lot of useful skills, including creative problem solving. What's in the bag? Shrimp shells, lots of them. Amazing how they smell when they get warm. He grinned. Air vents are perfect for hiding small objects. I looked at Kara, who was keeping watch from the other side of the parking lot. She gave me a thumbs up. All clear. How long would it take? I asked. 5 minutes, maybe less. Do it. Jonas worked quickly and efficiently, stuffing shrimp shells into every air vent he could find. When he finished, he pulled out a piece of paper and tucked it under the windshield wiper. What's the note say? Hope you enjoy the smell of success. Jonas packed up his bag. Should take about 20 minutes for the heat to really activate them. After that, every time he turns on the air conditioning, he'll think something crawled in there and expired, I finished. Exactly. We were walking back to my truck when my phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Marina, Lot B, Space 47. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 6 p.m. She brings wine. I showed the message to Kara. Someone's keeping close tabs on their schedule. Any idea who? I've got a theory. I looked back at Mrs. Winslow's house, visible in the distance. But I'm not ready to confirm it yet. My phone rang as we drove back toward town. Heather's name appeared on the screen. Aren't you going to answer it? Kara asked. Let it ring. She'll call back. She did, 3 more times. On the 4th call, I finally picked up. What, Heather? We need to talk. Her voice was strained, desperate. Clayton said you confronted him at Murphy's. I didn't confront anyone. We just had a friendly conversation about professional relationships. This has to stop, Evan. You're embarrassing both of us. I'm embarrassing us? That's rich, coming from someone who can't figure out how to put on a blouse correctly. I made a mistake, okay? I admit it, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, figure out how to fix our marriage. Our marriage ended the moment you decided to audition for Clayton's personal assistant position. The only thing left to figure out is how much it's going to cost you. You can't take everything. I have rights. You had rights. Past tense. Check the prenup you signed, specifically the infidelity clause. Your boyfriend's performance is documented in high definition. The line went quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, become harder. You think you're so smart? But Clayton has resources, connections. He can make your life very difficult. Let him try. I'm just a simple contractor who builds houses and minds his own business. What's he going to do? Sue me for having good timing? This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just haven't figured that out yet. I hung up and tossed the phone to Kara. Your turn to handle the calls. I've got work to do. What kind of work? I pulled into the driveway of our Victorian house and pointed to the workshop behind it. The kind that requires power tools and creative thinking. Clayton wants to play games. Let's see how he handles a contractor who knows where all the bodies are buried. Metaphorically speaking, Kara said quickly. Of course. What other way is there? The annual Founders' Day festival transformed our sleepy coastal town into something resembling a Norman Rockwell painting. If Norman Rockwell had painted gossipy New Englanders with smartphones and a taste for public drama. White tents lined Harbor Street, selling everything from lobster rolls to hand-carved trinkets, while families wandered between booths and children ran wild with cotton candy-stained fingers. I hadn't planned to attend, but Kara convinced me that hiding at home would send the wrong message. Let them see you're not ashamed, she'd argued. You didn't do anything wrong. She was right, of course. I walked through the festival grounds with my head up, nodding to neighbors and stopping to chat with clients about upcoming projects. The whispers followed me like a wake behind a boat, but I ignored them. Evan, there you are. I turned to find Margaret Chen, who owned the flower shop on Main Street, approaching with a concerned expression. Margaret was one of those people who collected information like other people collected stamps, and she had an uncanny ability to know everyone's business before they did. Margaret, enjoying the festival? Oh, you know how it is. Same vendors, same fried dough, same drama. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. Speaking of drama, I heard about your situation with Heather. I'm so sorry. Thank you. These things happen. Well, if you ask me, you're better off without her. I never trusted that woman. Too polished, if you know what I mean. Like she was always performing. Before I could respond, Margaret's attention shifted to something over my shoulder. Her eyes widened with the expression of someone who just witnessed a car accident. Well, would you look at that, she murmured. The nerve of some people. I turned to see Heather and Clayton walking toward us through the crowd. They weren't holding hands, but they moved with the synchronized steps of people who'd spent considerable time together. Heather wore a sundress I'd never seen before, probably bought for the occasion, while Clayton looked like he'd stepped out of a yacht club catalog. Evan, Heather said as they approached. Her voice was carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. I didn't expect to see you here. It's a public festival, Heather. I live here, remember? Clayton stepped slightly forward, a gesture that might have been protective or possessive. Garrison, beautiful day for the festival. It certainly is. I smiled at him. How's the BMW running? No mechanical problems, I hope? His expression flickered. What do you mean? Oh, just wondering. Sometimes cars develop mysterious odors when they sit in parking lots for extended periods. Especially near the water, salt air can cause all sorts of issues. Margaret was watching this exchange like a tennis match, her head turning back and forth between us. I could practically see her filing away every word for future distribution. I'm not sure what you're implying, Clayton said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Not implying anything. Just making conversation about automotive maintenance. It's amazing what can happen to a car when the owner's attention is elsewhere. Heather grabbed Clayton's arm. We should go find the Morrison booth. You wanted to introduce me to his wife, remember? Of course. Clayton straightened his shoulders, trying to regain his composure. Excuse us, Garrison. Some of us have important people to see. Enjoy yourselves, I called after them as they walked away. And Clayton, you might want to check your air conditioning. I heard someone mention it smelled a little fishy. Margaret waited until they were out of earshot before grabbing my arm. What was that about? Just neighborly concern for a fellow car owner. Evan Garrison, you're up to something, I can tell. I'm just a simple contractor, Margaret. What could I possibly be up to? She studied my face for a moment, then grinned. Whatever it is, I hope you get away with it. That woman had it coming. I spent the next hour wandering through the festival, stopping to chat with vendors and neighbors. The conversations all followed the same pattern, expressions of sympathy, barely concealed curiosity, and thinly veiled criticism of Heather's behavior. By the time I reached Sam's beer tent, I felt like I'd been through a receiving line at a funeral. You look like you need a drink, Sam said, handing me a cold bottle. Long morning. I bet. Half the town's been asking me about what happened at the pub yesterday. The other half already heard it from Margaret Chen. Sam leaned against the counter. How are you holding up? Better than expected. It helps knowing I'm not the one with something to hide. Speaking of hiding things, Sam glanced around, then pulled out his phone. Got an interesting text this morning. Thought you might want to see it. He showed me a photo taken from across the marina parking lot. Clayton's BMW sat in its usual spot, but now there was a crowd of people gathered around it, pointing and covering their noses. Clayton himself stood beside the car with the hood up, looking like he wanted to disappear. When was this taken? About an hour ago. My cousin works at the marina, says Clayton showed up to move his car and couldn't get within 10 feet of it without gagging. Sam grinned. Had to call a tow truck to take it to the dealership. Mechanical problems can be so inconvenient, especially when they happen at the worst possible time. Sam's expression grew more serious. Word is, Clayton's been making some calls, trying to find out who might have it in for him. Any luck? Hard to say, but I heard from Eddie Martineau that Clayton's been asking questions about you specifically. Where you go, who you talk to, what kind of resources you might have. I took a long drink of beer and considered this information. Clayton was smart enough to know the BMW incident wasn't random, which meant he was also smart enough to start connecting dots. That could be a problem, or it could be an opportunity. Sam, what do you know about Clayton's business practices? You mean besides the obvious? Sam lowered his voice. I know he's been cutting corners on some of his development projects, using cheaper materials, paying workers under the table, that sort of thing. Why? Just curious about what kind of man I'm dealing with. The kind who thinks rules don't apply to him, but also the kind who gets nervous when people start paying attention. Sam finished cleaning a glass and set it aside. Be careful, Evan. Men like Clayton don't like being embarrassed, and they have ways of pushing back. As if summoned by our conversation, Clayton appeared at the beer tent. He looked harried, his perfect hair disheveled and his expensive shirt wrinkled. The confident businessman from earlier had been replaced by someone who looked like he'd been running damage control all morning. Sam, he said, barely acknowledging me, I need to ask you something. Sure thing, Clayton. What can I do for you? Have you noticed anyone asking questions about me lately? Anyone who seemed particularly interested in my schedule or my, activities? Sam's expression remained carefully neutral. Can't say that I have? Why? Something wrong? Someone vandalized my car this morning. Filled it with rotting seafood. Clayton's eyes flicked to me, then back to Sam. I'm trying to figure out who might have done such a thing. That's terrible, Sam said with convincing sincerity. No, any idea why someone would target you specifically? I have some theories. Clayton's gaze settled on me. People who feel they've been wronged sometimes do irrational things. Is that what you think happened? I asked. Someone felt wronged? I think someone is trying to send a message, but they're going about it the wrong way. What would be the right way? Clayton stepped closer, lowering his voice. The right way would be to handle this like adults, privately, without involving the whole town in personal business. You mean the way you handled your professional relationship with my wife? Very privately. His face flushed red. That's between Heather and me. Actually, it's between Heather and me. You were just the entertainment. Clayton's hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. Then he seemed to remember where we were and who was watching. This isn't over, Garrison. No, it's not. But it's going to end exactly the way I want it to. He stalked away, leaving Sam and me alone at the beer tent. Sam waited until Clayton was out of earshot before speaking. You're really poking the bear, aren't you? The bear poked first. I'm just poking back. What's your next move? I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on the counter. I'm going to give Clayton exactly what he's asking for. A private conversation, just not the kind he's expecting. My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. Tonight, construction site on Maple Street. Come alone. I showed the message to Sam, who frowned. That sounds like a trap. Maybe. Or maybe it's time to find out who my anonymous friend really is. You're not actually going, are you? Wouldn't miss it for the world. The construction site on Maple Street looked different at night. What had been a busy hive of activity during the day became a maze of shadows and half-built structures under the pale glow of security lights. I'd been working on this project for 3 months, a small office complex that would house a dental practice and an accounting firm, but tonight it felt like foreign territory. I parked my truck across the street and checked the time. 11:30 p.m., exactly when the mysterious text had specified. The site was supposed to be empty, but I could see a light moving around inside the partially framed building. Someone was already there. My phone buzzed. Second floor, east corner. Come alone. I grabbed a flashlight from my truck and walked across the street. The chain-link fence surrounding the site had been cut, the opening just wide enough for a person to slip through. Professional work. Clean cuts, no jagged edges. Whoever had done this knew what they were doing. The skeleton of the building rose 2 stories above me, steel beams and concrete floors connected by temporary stairs. I climbed carefully, testing each step. The second floor was a maze of wall frames and electrical conduit, but I could see light coming from the east corner. "Hello, Evan." I turned toward the voice and found myself face to face with Detective Rose Martinez. She was sitting on a stack of drywall, holding a small LED lantern and looking remarkably comfortable for someone conducting a clandestine meeting at a construction site. "Detective Martinez, should I be surprised?" Probably not. I've been watching this situation develop for the past week, and I thought it was time we had a conversation. Rose had been with the local police department for 8 years, ever since moving here from Boston. She was thorough, fair, and had a reputation for seeing through lies and half-truths. She was also Mrs. Winslow's niece, which explained a lot. "Let me guess," I said, sitting down on a saw bench across from her. "Your aunt has been keeping you informed about the neighborhood drama." Aunt Dorothy sees everything that happens on Elm Street, including late-night departures, mysterious visitors, and the occasional marital dispute. Rose set the lantern between us. "She's also the one who's been sending you those helpful text messages." "Mrs. Winslow is my anonymous informant?" 83 years old and sharper than most people half her age. She's been documenting your wife's activities for months, taking photos, recording license plate numbers, keeping detailed notes. Rose pulled out a manila folder. "She asked me to give you this." The folder contained dozens of photographs, all taken with a telephoto lens from Mrs. Winslow's bedroom window. Heather and Clayton at the marina, entering and leaving her office building, sitting in his BMW at various locations around town. Each photo was dated and time-stamped with the precision of a professional surveillance operation. "Your aunt missed her calling," I said, flipping through the images. "She should have been a private investigator." "She says she's just looking out for her neighbors. But between you and me, I think she enjoys the excitement." Rose leaned forward. "The question is, what are you planning to do with all this information?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know you, Evan. You're not the type to just file for divorce and move on. You want payback, and you're methodical enough to plan something elaborate." She gestured around the construction site. "This meeting, for instance. Very dramatic." "I just want justice." "Justice or revenge? Is there a difference?" Rose considered this for a moment. "Sometimes, but not always." She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. This was taken at the marina this afternoon. The image showed Clayton's BMW surrounded by a hazmat crew in full protective gear. They were wearing masks and gloves, treating the car like it contained toxic waste. "Apparently, someone filled his air vents with decomposing seafood," Rose continued. "Cost him $800 to get the car professionally cleaned, and it still smells like low tide." "That's unfortunate. It's also creative, non-violent, and technically not illegal since no permanent damage was done." Rose put her phone away. "But it's also escalating. Clayton filed a complaint this afternoon claiming harassment." "Based on what evidence?" "None that would hold up in court, but he's angry, and angry people do stupid things." Rose stood up, pacing to the edge of the floor where the exterior wall would eventually be installed. "I'm not here to arrest you, Evan. I'm here to warn you." "About what?" "Clayton Mercer has been making phone calls. To his lawyer, to some business associates in Portland, to people who specialize in making problems disappear." She turned back to me. "He's not just some cheating businessman anymore. He's a cornered animal, and cornered animals are dangerous." Before I could respond, we heard footsteps on the stairs below. Rose immediately switched off her lantern, plunging us into darkness. I turned off my flashlight and moved to the window opening, peering down at the ground level. 2 figures were moving through the site, using flashlights to navigate between the equipment and material stacks. One was tall and broad-shouldered, Clayton. The other was smaller, more agile. Probably Derek, Heather's brother. "They're not supposed to be here," I whispered to Rose. "Neither are we," she whispered back. "But they don't know that." We listened as the footsteps climbed the stairs to the first floor. Clayton's voice carried clearly in the still night air. "Told you, it has to look like an accident. Equipment malfunction, structural failure, something that can't be traced back to us." "I don't know about this, Clayton," Derek replied. "Vandalism is one thing, but this is serious stuff. Garrison made it serious when he decided to play games with me. Now he gets to learn what happens when you mess with people who have resources." They were directly below us now, examining the temporary electrical setup that powered the site's lighting and equipment. Clayton was carrying a toolbox, while Derek held a powerful LED flashlight. "Just cut the main breaker and reverse a couple of wires," Clayton continued. When he comes to work tomorrow morning and turns on the power, he'll get a surprise that'll teach him some respect. Rose was already moving, pulling out her phone to call for backup, but I caught her arm and shook my head. This was personal now, and I wanted to handle it myself. I picked up a piece of rebar from a nearby stack and threw it across the floor. It clattered loudly against a concrete pillar, echoing through the building like a gunshot. "What was that?" Derek's voice was sharp with fear. "Probably just settling. Old buildings make noise." But Clayton didn't sound convinced. I threw another piece of rebar, this time in the opposite direction. The sound reverberated through the steel frame structure, making it impossible to pinpoint the source. "Someone's here," Derek said. "We need to leave." "Not until we finish what we came to do." I stood up and walked to the edge of the floor, making sure my footsteps were clearly audible. Then I called down in a voice that carried authority and menace. "Clayton Mercer, Derek Patterson, you have 30 seconds to get off my construction site before I call the police." The flashlight beams swung wildly as they searched for the source of my voice. Clayton stepped forward, trying to project confidence. "Garrison, is that you up there? 25 seconds. You can't prove we did anything wrong. We're just looking around. 20 seconds. And I can prove you're trespassing on private property with tools and malicious intent. That's a felony." Derek was already backing toward the stairs. "Clayton, let's go. This is crazy." 15 seconds. Clayton hesitated, torn between his desire for revenge and his instinct for self-preservation. Finally, survival won out. "This isn't over, Garrison." 10 seconds. They ran for the stairs, their footsteps clattering on the temporary steps. I heard them crash through the fence opening and sprint across the street to where Clayton's rental car was parked. The engine started with a roar, and they were gone. Rose switched her lantern back on. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, but it worked. This time. What about next time? I looked out at the empty street, thinking about Clayton's words. He was right. This wasn't over. But it was about to be. "Next time, I won't give them 30 seconds. Rose gathered up the folder of photographs and handed it to me. "Aunt Dorothy wanted me to tell you something else. She says the key to winning a war isn't always about being stronger than your enemy. Sometimes it's about being smarter." "What does that mean?" "It means maybe it's time to stop playing defense and start playing offense." Rose headed for the stairs. "But be careful, Evan. The next move you make needs to be the last one." After she left, I sat alone in the darkness for a long time, thinking about strategy and consequences. Clayton had just shown me exactly how far he was willing to go, which meant I needed to show him how far I was willing to go. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number, a different one this time. "Saw what happened tonight. Ready to take this to the next level? Meet me at Murphy's tomorrow at noon." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who has as much reason to hate Clayton Mercer as you do." This was getting interesting. Murphy's pub was crowded with the usual lunch crowd when I arrived the next day. Construction workers, fishermen, and retirees filled the worn wooden tables, creating a steady hum of conversation and the clink of silverware against plates. I scanned the room looking for someone who might be my mysterious contact, but everyone looked familiar. "Evan, over here." I turned toward the voice and felt my jaw drop. Sitting alone in a corner booth was Jennifer Mercer, Clayton's wife. She was younger than I'd expected, probably early 30s, with auburn hair and the kind of understated elegance that came from good breeding rather than expensive clothes. "Mrs. Mercer," I said, sliding into the booth across from her. "I have to admit, you're not who I was expecting. Call me Jennifer, and I imagine you weren't expecting anyone." She gestured to the manila envelope on the table between us. "I received your package yesterday morning." The USB drive. I'd almost forgotten about that in the chaos of everything else that had been happening. "I'm sorry you had to see that," I said. "Are you? Really?" Jennifer's eyes were sharp, intelligent. "Because it seems to me you wanted me to see exactly what kind of man I married. I wanted you to know the truth. The truth." She opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs, not the ones Mrs. Winslow had taken, but professional surveillance photos that showed Clayton with at least 3 different women over the past 2 years. "The truth is that your wife isn't Clayton's first affair. She's just the most recent." I stared at the photos, recognizing some of the women as local business owners and professionals. "How long have you known?" "About the affairs? 2 years. About the financial irregularities in his business? 6 months. About his plans to leave me and the kids for a younger woman?" Jennifer's voice remained steady, but I could see the anger burning behind her eyes. "I found that out yesterday when I confronted him with your video." What did he say? He said he was sorry I had to find out this way, but that our marriage had been over for years, and he'd fallen in love with someone who appreciated him. She laughed bitterly. Apparently, Heather makes him feel young again. I'm sorry. Don't be. I stopped loving Clayton Mercer a long time ago, but I do love my children, and I love the life we've built together, and I'm not about to let him destroy both just so he can play house with your wife. Jennifer pulled out another folder, this one much thicker than the first. I've been documenting Clayton's business practices for months. Fraudulent expense reports, tax evasion, bribery of city officials, unsafe construction practices that violate building codes. She slid the folder across to me. Everything you need to destroy him professionally. I opened the folder and found myself looking at bank records, email printouts, photographs of substandard construction work, and what appeared to be recorded phone conversations. It was a prosecutor's dream and a defendant's nightmare. Why are you giving this to me? Because I want him to lose everything the same way he was planning to make me lose everything. Jennifer leaned forward. But I also want to make sure Heather understands exactly what kind of man she's throwing her life away for. What do you mean? I mean, your wife thinks she's won some kind of prize. She thinks Clayton is going to divorce me, marry her, and they'll live happily ever after in his big house with his successful business. Jennifer smiled coldly. She has no idea that the business is failing, the house is mortgaged to the hilt, and Clayton's been stealing from his own company to maintain his lifestyle. This was better than I'd hoped for. Not only was I getting revenge on Clayton, but I was about to watch Heather discover that her Prince Charming was actually a pauper in expensive clothes. What do you want me to do with this information? Whatever causes them the most pain and humiliation. Jennifer stood up, gathering her purse. But do it publicly. I want everyone in this town to know exactly who Clayton Mercer really is. After she left, I sat in the booth for another hour, studying the documents and formulating a plan. By the time I finished my second beer, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The Founders' Day festival was still running through the weekend, which meant the town square would be packed with people. Perfect for what I had in mind. I called Kara first. I need your help with something big. How big? Nuclear big. Can you meet me at the house in an hour? On my way. Next, I called Jonas. Remember what you said about creative problem solving? Yeah. I need the most creative solution you can think of, tonight. What kind of solution? The kind that makes sure everyone in town knows the truth about Clayton Mercer. Jonas was quiet for a moment. I'll need some equipment. Whatever you need. Money's no object. Give me until tomorrow evening. And Evan? Yeah? This is going to be spectacular. I spent the rest of the afternoon at home, going through Jennifer's files and cross-referencing them with the information Mrs. Winslow had collected. The picture that emerged was devastating. Clayton wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a criminal who'd been stealing from clients, employees, and the government for years. Kara arrived as I was printing out the most damaging documents. What's all this? She asked, looking at the papers scattered across my kitchen table. I told her about my meeting with Jennifer, the evidence she'd provided, and the plan that was forming in my mind. Kara listened without interrupting, her expression growing more amazed with each detail. Clayton's wife gave you all this? Apparently, I'm not the only one who wants to see him get what he deserves. And Heather has no idea what she's gotten herself into? Not a clue. She thinks she's trading up from a small-town contractor to a successful businessman. She's about to find out she's actually trading down to an unemployed criminal. Kara picked up one of the bank statements, studying the numbers. According to this, Clayton's been embezzling money for 2 years. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Which explains how he could afford all those expensive dinners and hotel rooms. What are you going to do with all this? I'm going to give Clayton and Heather exactly what they deserve, a public reckoning. My phone rang. Heather's name appeared on the screen. Aren't you going to answer it? Kara asked. Might as well. I'm curious what she wants now. Evan, we need to talk. Heather's voice was strained, desperate. Clayton told me what happened at the construction site last night. What about it? You can't keep harassing us like this. We're trying to build a life together, and you're making it impossible. A life together? I laughed. Heather, do you have any idea what kind of man you're building this life with? Clayton is a successful businessman who treats me with respect and appreciation, something you never did. Clayton is a thief and a liar who's been stealing money from his own company to pay for his affairs, but I'm sure he treats you very well with other people's money. That's not true, isn't it? Ask him about the missing funds from the Morrison project. Ask him about the bribes he paid to get the permits for the Harborview development. Ask him about the safety violations that nearly got 3 of his workers hospitalized. The line went quiet. When Heather spoke again, her voice was smaller, less certain. You're lying. Am I? Then ask him to show you his real financial statements. Not the ones he shows investors, the real ones. Ask him how much money he actually has in his personal accounts. I don't have to listen to this. No, you don't. But you might want to ask yourself why his wife was so eager to help me destroy him. I hung up before she could respond. Kara was staring at me with something approaching awe. You talked to Clayton's wife? She talked to me. Turns out she's been planning her own revenge for months. I just gave her the opportunity to execute it. This is getting complicated. No, it's getting simple. Tomorrow night, everyone in town is going to know the truth about Clayton Mercer and Heather Patterson. After that, they can build their life together in whatever's left of the wreckage. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonas. Everything's ready. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., Town Square. Make sure you have a good view. I showed the message to Kara. Want to watch some fireworks? Wouldn't miss it for the world. Sunday evening brought dark clouds rolling in from the Atlantic, the kind of weather that made smart people stay indoors with hot coffee and good books. But the final night of Founders Day Festival was sacred tradition in our town, and it would take more than threatening skies to keep people away from the closing ceremonies. I stood at the edge of the town square, watching families claim spots on blankets and folding chairs for the evening's entertainment. The gazebo in the center of the square had been decorated with strings of lights and red, white, and blue bunting, creating a picture-perfect New England scene that would have made a postcard photographer weep with joy. What the photographers couldn't capture was the electric tension running through the crowd like current through a wire. Word had spread that something big was going to happen tonight, the kind of small-town drama that people would talk about for years. You sure about this? Kara asked, appearing beside me with 2 cups of hot chocolate from the concession stand. Too late to back out now, I said, accepting the cup gratefully. Besides, they brought this on themselves. Where are they? I nodded toward the other side of the square, where Heather and Clayton sat on a bench near the gazebo. They looked like a magazine advertisement for successful couples, her in a designer dress that probably cost more than most people made in a week, him in a cashmere sweater and perfectly pressed slacks. They were holding hands and smiling at each other with the kind of obvious affection that screamed, "Look how happy we are," to anyone within 50 yards. They certainly look confident, Kara observed. That's about to change. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonas. 5 minutes. Get ready. I looked around the square, noting the positions of key players in tonight's drama. Mrs. Winslow sat in her wheelchair near the front of the crowd, flanked by 3 other elderly women who formed the unofficial intelligence network of our town. Detective Rose Martinez stood near the police barrier, officially on duty, but clearly interested in the evening's entertainment. Sam Murphy was working the beer tent, but I could see him watching the crowd with the sharp eyes of someone who knew trouble was coming. Margaret Chen had claimed a prime spot directly in front of the gazebo, her phone already out and ready to document whatever was about to unfold. She caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up, which told me the gossip network was fully operational and waiting for fresh material. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Davidson's voice boomed through the PA system. Thank you all for joining us for the closing ceremony of this year's Founders Day Festival. Before we begin the evening's program, I'd like to recognize some of the business leaders who made this event possible. The mayor began reading from a list of sponsors and donors, thanking them for their contributions to the community. Clayton's name was third on the list, and he stood to acknowledge the polite applause with a modest wave that somehow managed to look both humble and self-important. That was Jonas's cue. The large screen that had been showing a slideshow of festival highlights suddenly went black. For a moment, the crowd murmured with confusion, thinking it was a technical malfunction. Then new images began to appear. Bank statements, financial records, email printouts, all blown up large enough for everyone in the square to read. What the hell? Clayton started to stand, but the first audio clip began playing through the PA system, and his voice filled the town square. Told the inspector that the foundation work was up to code, but we both know it isn't. Just make sure the check clears before anyone takes a closer look. The crowd fell silent as the implications sank in. These weren't random accusations or gossip. This was documented evidence of criminal behavior presented with the production values of a professional documentary. The screen showed photographs of construction sites with visible safety violations, followed by email exchanges between Clayton and city officials that made it clear bribes had been paid and inspections had been falsified. Each piece of evidence was time-stamped and cross-referenced, building an undeniable case of systematic corruption. "Turn it off," Clayton shouted, pushing through the crowd toward the AV equipment. "This is all fabricated. Someone's trying to frame me." But Jonas had anticipated this reaction. The screen switched to video footage, security camera recordings from Clayton's own office that showed him doctoring financial records and discussing illegal activities with associates. His own words condemned him more effectively than any accusation could have. Heather sat frozen on the bench, staring at the screen with the expression of someone watching a car accident in slow motion. The man she'd thrown her marriage away for was being revealed as a criminal and a fraud in front of the entire town, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The final segment was the most devastating. Jennifer Mercer appeared on screen, sitting in what was clearly a lawyer's office, calmly explaining how her husband had been stealing from his business partners, evading taxes, and using company funds to finance his extramarital affairs. "The man you think you know doesn't exist," Jennifer said, looking directly into the camera. "Clayton Mercer is a liar, a thief, and a coward who destroys everything he touches. I should know. I was married to him for 12 years. The screen went black, and the town square erupted into chaos. People were shouting questions, taking pictures, and pointing at Clayton, who stood in the middle of the crowd looking like a man who'd just watched his entire life collapse in real time. "This is insane," he screamed. "Someone hacked my files. They're trying to destroy me." "With what?" Detective Rose Martinez stepped forward, her badge visible and her voice carrying authority. "With your own records? Your own voice? Your own security footage?" Clayton spun around, looking for support, for allies, for anyone who might believe his desperate denials. Instead, he found a crowd of neighbors and business associates who were staring at him with disgust and betrayal. "The Morrison Project," Eddie Martineau called out from the crowd. "You told us that foundation was solid. My nephew was working that site when it nearly collapsed." "The Harbor View permits," added Sarah Jenkins, who ran the hardware store. "You said everything was legitimate, but we all wondered how you got approval so fast." More voices joined in, a chorus of accusations and angry questions that painted a picture of a man who'd been lying to everyone for years. Clayton tried to answer, to explain, to deflect blame onto others, but his words were drowned out by the crowd's anger. Through it all, Heather sat motionless on the bench, staring at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. The woman who had once carried herself with effortless confidence, so sure she'd found a better life, a smarter choice, a superior man, now looked small and unmoored. Her shoulders were slumped, her posture collapsed inward, as though the weight of the truth had finally pressed down on her all at once. Everything she thought she knew about Clayton was disintegrating in real time, and she was only just beginning to understand the true cost of the choices she'd made. I walked over to where she sat, ignoring the noise and chaos swirling around us. The raised voices, the murmurs of the crowd, the flash of cameras, none of it mattered anymore. "Heather?" She looked up at me, her eyes glassy, rimmed red with unshed tears. There was accusation there, but also something else. Fear. Disbelief. "You did this." "No," I said evenly. "Clayton did this. I just made sure everyone knew about it." "You've destroyed him," she said, her voice trembling. "Destroyed us." "I didn't destroy anything," I replied. "I revealed the truth. What you do with it is up to you." She stood slowly, smoothing her designer dress out of habit, even as it hung wrinkled and defeated on her frame. The composure she'd worn like armor for years finally cracked. "I loved him." "You loved the idea of him," I said gently, but without hesitation. "The successful businessman, the sophisticated older man, the escape from your boring small-town life." I gestured toward Clayton, now surrounded by officers, Detective Martinez questioning him, as the crowd watched with barely concealed fascination. "That man never existed." Her lips parted, as if to argue, but no words came. "What am I supposed to do now?" she asked quietly. "I don't know, Heather," I said. "But you'll figure it out. You always do." She didn't respond. She simply turned and walked away, pushing through the thinning crowd toward the parking area without looking back. I watched her go, not with triumph, but with a strange, hollow sense of closure. The woman who had betrayed our marriage was finally facing the consequences of her choices, and the man who had helped her do it was about to face justice. Clayton was still loudly protesting his innocence when the state police arrived 20 minutes later. Apparently, someone had forwarded copies of all the evidence to the Attorney General's office, and they'd been waiting for the right moment to move. This was it. As they led Clayton away in handcuffs, he caught sight of me standing at the edge of the square. "This is your fault, Garrison," he shouted. "You couldn't handle losing, so you destroyed an innocent man." "Innocent men don't get arrested for embezzlement and fraud," I called back. "They get arrested for being guilty." The crowd slowly began to disperse as the drama wound down, people heading home with enough gossip to fuel conversations for months. I remained in the square as cleanup crews started dismantling the festival, folding chairs, taking down decorations, erasing the evidence of celebration. It felt fitting, watching the end of the festival and the end of my marriage with the same detached calm. "Hell of a show," Sam said, appearing beside me with 2 beers. Jonas really outdid himself with the production values. He's got a talent for creative solutions. What happens now? I accepted the beer and took a long, steady drink. Now Clayton goes to prison. Heather files for divorce, and I get on with my life. Any regrets? I considered it seriously. Did I regret exposing Clayton's crimes? No. Did I regret ending my marriage to Heather? No. Did I regret the methods I'd used? The only thing I regret, I said, is not installing that camera sooner. Sam laughed. Fair enough. You heading home? In a minute. I wanted to sit with this moment. The quiet satisfaction of a job finished, the clean finality of justice served, the knowledge that the people who'd betrayed me were finally facing the consequences of their actions. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, paperwork, and the dull mechanics of rebuilding a life. But tonight belonged to resolution. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Winslow. "Well done, dear. Come by tomorrow for tea. I have more stories about the neighborhood you might enjoy." I looked across the square toward her house, where I could see her silhouette in the window, and raised my beer in a small toast. Some battles are won with strength, others with patience, timing, and the right allies. The storm clouds that had been threatening all evening finally broke, rain scattering the last stragglers toward their cars. I stood there for a few moments longer, letting the rain wash away the dust and debris of the night, then turned and walked home to my empty house. For the first time in months, empty didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like freedom. The trip was over, the show was canceled, and I was finally free to write my own ending.